Coming at you from Scratch at Wolf Studio. It's that time again to rage across the internet. Your very favorite Werewolf the Apocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Porter. As always, to my left, we have the official stand-in for Bryan Cranston, Mr. Daniel Tyson.
Hey, everybody.
And across from me, the Len Kabazinski of podcast, Mr. Tommy Dixon. How's it going, gentlemen?
It is going.
It's going.
It's good to see you.
It's good to be here.
It's recording day.
That's right. It's our favorite day of the week.
Yes, it is.
Next to podcast day, of course.
Well, depending on who you are and when you're listening, it's one and the same.
That's true.
That's fair.
Hey, happy
Laying down
podcast
some
day.
knowledge.
He is. He's beaten again. Oh, this is Danny's season.
This is really his
Danny's
season.
season. Okay.
He has been on the ball in a way I'm not comfortable with, quite frankly.
Taking away all our jokes.
He's going to be sitting in this chair before too long. We're not even going to know what happened.
Nah, I'm good. I like this
Ooh,
one.
I can't wait to hear his intro.
Gross.
A little curious about that.
I did it one time and I hated it.
I enjoyed it when I did it the one time.
That was a good one.
That was a long time ago, too.
It was a long time
Jesus.
ago. That was like 30.
And that makes today a special day.
Today is a special day. Episode 104. This is the anniversary, guys. I mean, I know because we're fun with numbers.
Right.
We decided
Right.
that January was the mark of a season.
Correct.
So season 1 was truncated, fine. It was a shorter season.
Mm-hmm.
So we started season 3 in January. And then we had episode 100 in February.
Yep.
And now this is episode 104, which is, when you do the math, is the anniversary.
Technically, yeah. It's our 2-year anniversary.
So happy anniversary.
Yeah.
And we thought, what better way to handle the anniversary than to talk something big.
Yeah. And this is kind of a big deal in game.
Yeah. So I thought definitely this is the time. I think this is a good time to talk about it. And it's something, such a vast, meaty topic that I thought, what better thing to do than to have one of our very favorite guests on.
Mm-hmm.
Our good friend. He's etched in crimson. You know him from Weaponized Ink, Mr. C. Grant Rose. Grant, how are you doing, brother?
Hey, how y'all doing? Happy to be here, of course.
You're doing great. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
This is number 7, I believe.
It is number 7. So rapidly getting the race to 10 is on,
Now, them steak knives are going to be yours, I'm telling you what.
As long as it comes with a toaster. Need that toaster in my life.
I could see about an RAI toaster. That's probably more doable than steak
I was
knives.
going to say,
I must say that's true.
and if not,
I would wager those steak knives would be like made of Play-Doh or something.
we could always just put a REI sticker on a toaster and send it to him.
Oh, that was my plan.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you ruined it. Look at it is his season. He ruined it already.
Right.
Gave it away.
I'm just saying.
Absolutely the plan. That's going to be way cheaper.
I know it's possible to make. They have toasters where you can make a symbol on the toast.
Right, but we could instead go to the dollar store across the street, buy a toaster, and slap a sticker on the side of it.
The I Can Soak It sticker.
One an RAI and I can soak it. And then we'll retire the damn stickers.
Make it limited edition.
That's right.
That's right. Speaking of the store,
Right?
we have one.
Yes, we do. With more stuff on it again.
Old bunch of stuff in there. That might get cleaned up soon. But right now, there's all sorts of stuff there with our logo schlocked on the side. Which, it's a fun way to show the love, or you just like the logo, whatever. It's a great way to support, show other people. Speaking of support, you could go and join us and make a donation over on our Ko-Fi, ko-fi/rage across the internet.
Find that link over on our website.
That's true, or in the show notes.
Both. They're always there. If you ever have trouble finding them, you shouldn't have any trouble. But
Yell at Danny if you ever have trouble.
And you could yell at Danny through our Discord,
This is true.
which you can get the link to on our forums at, again, rageacrosstheinternet.com.
.com.
Yup.
Really?
The anniversary.
.com.
Hey, there we go. We got it. Thank you, Grant.
Only the 7th time, right? 7th time makes it right.
Hey,
Perfect.
so you know the score now. There's no excuse. And of course, if you don't want to make a monetary contribution, which is where Ko-Fi is, either a one-time donation of your choosing or join one of our tiers, you get some where we reward you, we thank you, we give you gifts in exchange. But if not, just share the love. Ratings, reviews, telling your friends, telling your enemies, telling the crossing guard that why are you talking? You're far too old to be talking to a crossing guard because there's an implication there. But you can still advertise for the podcast. You can tell them about it.
I mean, maybe they're helping your child cross the street, and you're just being friendly.
Well, hopefully you have a child there. 'Cause otherwise, I don't know what you're doing.
Which one's yours? I don't know. I haven't picked one out yet.
That's beautiful. Oh my God, Danny.
Jesus.
It's 3 for 3 right now.
That man is in
Wow.
rare form today.
He made himself laugh that hard.
So if this is your first episode, welcome. We actually talk about werewolf on this show.
Yeah.
Various aspects of. Hope you're having fun with us. Grant, I hope you're going to have fun.
Of course, always have fun.
Excellent.
Always have lots of fun doing these.
Good to hear, because our jokey joke show, we definitely, if nothing else, we entertain ourselves.
Hopefully others.
Half the
Hopefully.
battle.
It really is. But let's get to it.
Yeah, we have an important topic for our special anniversary.
So without further ado,
Yeah.
the Garo Nation is a long-lived society that largely followed the oral tradition. And that history is brought together in the Silver Record. Something that is, I would say, monolithic in scale and intent.
Yeah, it's a bigger deal than it sounds.
Well, and it's also sometimes not, and sometimes overvalued. But this is the kind of stuff we're going to be here talking about today. So first of all, what is the Silver Record? We know that it is the culmination of the songs and stories and history of the Garo. The lessons, the past, the windows perhaps to the future and learning those lessons.
That's a good way of putting it.
Now, of course, there's the source book, the Silver Record. Which,
Correct.
and I want to be clear right off the jump street here. This is not a book report. We're certainly touching down on things that are in the Silver Record, the book. But this episode is not about the Silver Record, the book. It is about the Silver Record in the game, in the world.
It's the meta Silver Record.
Yes.
Yeah, we absolutely looked into the book, Silver
Right.
Record, and how else are we supposed to distinguish the two of them right now without making it sound absolutely ridiculous? But
But here it is.
Right.
The source book exists. Obviously, those are in the record. We will but
Yes.
it's not about that source book.
no, we're talking about the in-game valuable source of the Silver Record. Does that make? I hope that fucking
We
makes
hope you're
sense.
following us now.
I know Tom's trying to piece everything together.
It's a giant jigsaw puzzle right now.
It's like we've been practicing how the hell we're supposed to explain this, even when we talked about the episode and doing the
Right.
research. So I don't look at the Silver Record. No, you have to look at the Silver Record, but we want to talk about the Silver Record, not about the Silver Record.
Yeah, but what if I?
That just gets confusing.
Exactly.
And what if I
But
wanted
what
to
about the
go?
Silver Record?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how far into the Silver Record do I have to look for the Silver Record?
Right. See?
There's
And
a
then
fine line.
It's like, well, what about the whole glyph section? But we're not talking about the Silver Record. You don't need to talk about the glyph.
I had actually asked you about that.
Yeah.
But that is important stuff. Looking into, like, the glyph section, some of that was really fucking cool.
Well, yeah, to talk about the source book for a minute, yeah, there is an awesome glyph section at the back, which dissects, it gives you all sorts of glyphs, but also dissects, like, the tribal glyphs. It goes through some ferroglyphs. It's really neat outside of game. It's a nice resource to have.
Yes, and I like them, especially the tribal ones. I mean, if we're going to talk about it for a few seconds at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, just a little bit.
It gives the reasoning why some of those symbols are the way they are. And there are combinations of different, like, claw marks, the source of where they would come from, and the importance of what that mark means in combination of other marks to make one big symbol.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting because you can see how the glyphs you take the simple concept, you add them together, make a third, to something else. I think about the Shadow Lord one, which was eye-opening to me, where what we're depicting there is two hands coming together, clutching something.
Yes.
And once you see that, you can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking, with the two claws
Yep.
clutching and bringing together.
And you got the two marks at the top. Well, those are where the thumbs go. Oh, it all makes sense now.
Uh-huh. That was, I agree with you, the Shadow Lord was the big one, as far as being able to see the different marks that the claw would make.
Yeah, I think we're not making a meal out of that. I think we're all done with it. But I think being able to see those dissected like that was pretty interesting.
I'm mind blown over here because I didn't read that part. Because I asked you and you said we're not going to bother. So,
Yeah.
But now that I know, I'm going back and I'm reading that.
So for those of us like over in Weaponized Inc., where we're having to recreate a lot of these things for Savage Age, like the breakdown of how the glyphs come together is intuitively useful for us because a lot of us over there we have a classical education in linguistics and cultural development, so we really use that as kind of like a skeleton and a basic blueprint to kind of recreate these prehistoric languages and modes of communication, especially for our unique changing breeds.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome.
Well, I mean, I'm less impressed than Danny. I've come to expect that level of excellence of you guys over at Weaponized Inc.
Fair.
Yeah, that's right. I complimented him and high-roaded you.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Well done.
And of course, Weaponized Inc., you guys handled the Savage Age. Werewolf the Savage Age, which is an excellent line, and I encourage each and every one of you to go check that out if you haven't already. And also go back to those previous Savage Age episodes, which will be a good primer because we ain't done talking about those, but not today.
Not today.
Now, going to the Silver Record itself, I think I'm going to open with this, is that I went back to 2nd edition. And, of course, that's where I started. It was hot off the presses, boom, 2nd edition, the new hotness. This is where Borders Genesis and the Werewolf begins. And the Legends of the Garou in that book. And it was always a story that stuck out to me. Mm-hmm. And since we're doing this episode, I wanted to come back to it. Because that story, it involves Death Takes Last and Kate Chaser Never Rests. And a fresh cub named Brian.
Just Brian.
Brian.
Okay.
This is a human name. He's a human man.
Okay.
Hasn't changed yet.
He's a boy.
He's a cub, so
he's
just
brand
changed.
New. And the story is about he's being taught the Silver Record. I mean, it's that standard. In the book, we're leading you and explaining to you the world around you through this story, through this character, who is being taught the Silver Record in a lodge of the Silver Record. Now, we talk about how, there's not a copy of the Silver Record in the fucking Library of Congress. We have to maintain the veil. But these lodges would exist. These cabins, these caves, or sacred places where the Silver Record would be carved into the walls and protected. Because after all, the old tradition, how much gets lost when somebody dies? Or how much of a history, when a keeper of the record falls? The story, it talks about how each glyph contains a spirit within, and how you can run your fingers over these glyphs and have the story, my words not theirs, kind of beamed into your brain. You experience it that way. I mean, read the story. But it ends with the end of that lodge, with the death of Death Takes Last, and young Brian being christened Worm Takes Last, who, by the way, is the guy narrating the Silver Record source book.
Oh, no shit.
No shit. He is
Whoa.
canonically the final lore keeper of the Silver Record, because that last Silver Lodge was burned to the ground to keep the worm from getting their hands on it.
Holy hell. I didn't even think about that.
They also have a lot of tangential connections between the Sept that was guarding the Silver Record, which was the Sept of the Hidden Wind. A lot of those guys, you see them pop up in other Tales of the Garou. Unless you're tracking who they are, like by name, you kind of don't know that they were part of the Sept that was meant to guard the Silver Record. So it's definitely worth going over and reading through the Tales of the Garou through all of 2nd edition and a lot of revised.
Yeah, there's some really good shit there. Some of it's linked, some of it's not. But yeah, I thought that was great. And I love this concept of the Lodge of the Silver Record. And I know canonically there aren't anymore. We'll talk about how it exists in the Silver Record source book in a minute or two. But I want to talk about this idea of this lodge for a second, of this idea of these lost places where the Silver Record exists tangibly like this. For example, in our games, I think you guys can think of a lodge house that exists inside a cairn.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That we're not allowed to be in.
that you're not allowed to go into.
Right. At least one, right?
Right? That idea, or maybe you find like a lost cairn and what's down this cave path or whatever. And you find all these glyphs and now there's something to protect, or a lore keeper that exists that needs to be protected to pass on knowledge. Of course, now that gets in the way of Worm Takes Last, who's supposed to be the last one, but with there being a new edition coming out at some point, that has to be addressed in the first place. Because he was supposed to be the last, and now it's been 20 years. 30, I guess, at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could still be alive. He wasn't very old, but, You know,
Yeah,
that's-
He's getting there.
allegedly there was an apocalypse in between this, so it's something to consider.
But if he lived through whatever craziness they're going to have in between the revised and Werewolf 5, he will be 48 in game, because he was supposed to be born somewhere around 1974.
Jesus.
Right? And that's old for a Garu, but it's not old for a Garu. You can live well. Look,
Yeah.
Larissa's in her hundreds, but most Garu don't live that long, so it's a coin toss there.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, if you ever had to battle, there's always battles going on, something like that. But that's nuts. That's so crazy to think about.
It was a detail that I missed until I went to do research again for this episode, and I was thrilled to see there's Worm Takes Last in the Silver Record sourcebook. How cool is that? And he's
awesome.
talking about the shit.
That's very cool. I love that Doc Connect.
That's one of the great things about Werewolf. And also, now that I'm thinking out loud, we're talking about age. I'm sad that probably Larissa won't be in 5.
She is old.
Right?
They're gonna make her 130,
Exactly.
130
What is
something.
keeping her going?
She will be older than the game of poker.
All right, so let's keep on that thread where he's the last one.
Mm-hmm.
How else does the Silver Record keep getting updated?
This is one thing I like. He's carrying around hides of Black Spiral dancers that have been cleansed and using them as record keeping.
I actually pulled a quote from that.
Oh, cool.
Direct from the book. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, it is skin. Black spiral hide, to be precise, tanned with blood, piss, and clear water, and purified by a host of secret rites until the worm taint has been washed away. It's not easy, but I think it's worth the effort. See, the way I look at it, we're reclaiming our lost brothers and sisters for Gaia. It's an honor, really. A respect given to white howlers they once were. Maybe, by purifying these skins and writing our greatest legends across them, we're setting their souls free from the black spiral and bringing them back to the family.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I could not
That's
grab that.
awesome.
That was
Yeah, I
super
know.
neat.
That is so cool.
So he's just carrying around rolls of hides.
With the legends scrawled on. And how do you get them? You travel. You talk to every Galliard. And it's always worth noting, actually, that the Worm Takes Last is a Philodox.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either.
Yep.
He's not even a Galliard.
Nope.
He's just assumed the position because of how important it is.
No, he was chosen, technically.
Even cooler.
But so there he is, somewhere in the world, wandering, grabbing every story he can to add it to the last physical copy of the record so that the history isn't lost forever.
Fucking cool.
Right?
I can just see that, he travels from, sept to sept. When's your next moot? I'd love to hear these stories.
Well, and think of the implication for games, too. Maybe he needs an escort through hostile territory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, think of what the worm could do with that.
Right?
One, you have a bunch of skins, so skin dancers could do all kinds of crazy stuff with skins. And then on top of that, you have all these secret prophecies and stories and history that they can take advantage of.
Could you imagine? And I don't know if this would work, but fuck it, right? Could you imagine a skin dancer with the silver record on his hide?
Oh, boy.
But those hides were...
They're already purified.
They were
So
purified
would he
and
even have a
cleansed.
worm taint?
I think by virtue of the right, it would end up with worm taint, but neither here nor there. At that point, that is a skin dancer. What do you do with him? You can't kill him. I mean, you can, but you can't damage his hide because then you're fucking up the silver record.
Oh, man.
Well, that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's why I brought it up.
Exactly.
The implications on that one, that's nuts.
I mean, what are the odds, though, that there's 5 under the same moon, though?
Oh, look, this
I
is
get it, but I'm just saying.
like
it's
slim and none.
It's slim and none,
But
but
we're just playing with the thought for a minute.
I like it. But the odds aren't really there. But I
No,
like
no, but it's a nightmare scenario.
It is
We're
a
just
very-
pretending.
Yeah, Nightmare Scenario is right. I like that.
I slashed his arm, and now look, the story of the end of the War of Rage is gone.
Oh, bummer.
And we don't know how it ended.
There goes the prophecy of the Phoenix.
Right?
Just gone.
Which, moving to the subject of what kind of thing, and I mean, we're going to bounce around because it's what we do. The kind of stuff that's in the Silver Record, I think Prophecy of the Phoenix is one of the biggest and first things to be brought up.
Oh, very. Whereas if, we're going back to that hide thing, or it was slashed and no longer that story's there, you would think that enough people would know that story that it can be written down again.
Well, Prophecy of the Phoenix, certainly.
Yeah.
But I like how
Just throwing it out there.
did you like the how now we'll never know how the War of Rage ended?
Like we knew already.
Right, like let's ask all the Naga walking around.
Maybe Brian will know.
See, but then it goes into a big game of telephone.
Which
if it's all just oral at this point, there's going to be some stuff that's lost in translation.
Absolutely true. And I mean, that's something I've always been, I don't want to say critical, but maybe critical of in the Silver Record. Or maybe not, no, not critical, but I've always pointed out that, just because the story goes that way doesn't mean that that's how that happened. This story was from like 1,000 years ago. So I know what it says.
Right.
What really happened.
Things get embellished all the time. That's just how it goes.
Stuff gets left out. Stuff gets added. You want to impress someone in a
mood. It depends on the
storyteller,
too, because they will give different inflections on different things.
Exactly. What are they focusing on? You could tell the same story 5 or 6 different ways, depending even on the point of view of the person you're telling it from.
Mm-hmm.
It's what lesson they're trying to teach.
Right?
Oh, that's a big one, too. Good job.
Maybe you're focusing on the horror of battle, or the importance of bonds on a battlefield, or the futility of war, or the hope in the revel in a victory, and it's the same story.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it could be the same story, just told those 4 different ways.
Right. All the more important to get as many different versions of a thing.
Now, what about stories that we know of that maybe aren't in the Silver Record? Maybe should be.
Well, see, that becomes a question, right? Because the Silver Record is so vast.
Right.
That what is in it, what isn't in it, and maybe do we even say what should and shouldn't be?
And again, are we talking about the source book? Or are we talking about it
We're talking about in-game. We might talk about stuff that's in the source book, but that's in the Silver Record. So we're done addressing the source book specifically.
Just making the joke again.
You son of a bitch.
So here's my thing on it. So you have to take into account, you have the Mokole and they have Nissus, but a lot of that doesn't actually get transferred over to the Guru Nation. It doesn't get added to the Silver Record. You have these pages and pages of stories and info that just never gets to the Guru Nation. So it never actually gets immortalized in the Silver Record. That could be, and probably are, of utmost importance to the War of Rage and Apocalypse itself. So I think that's a big travesty. That would be one thing that the Guru Pack would have to really start trying to focus on. Let's get all these outside sources of this information consolidated for us.
That would actually make for some really interesting stories, even maybe a chronicle or two. The idea of perhaps being sent by Outworm Takes Last to try and gather some of these stories for a more complete record of everything. The idea of having to maybe find some Mokole in the first place, right? Because that's already...
Right, yeah, that's already... Good luck.
Like, you're not going to go to the zoo and check out the reptile house and fucking cash in. Jurassic Park, not a real place. You're going to have to find one. And then you're going to have to...
And you have to make them nice.
Right. You're going to have to, find him in a way that doesn't get you ate. and then to get him to talk to you, to trust you enough to talk to you, to build that bond, to hear those stories, and then, get out alive with the stories.
Right, because even if he tells you stories, are you trustworthy enough to hold on to those?
Well, you're going to have to get him to talk in the first place, but certainly there's someone chasing you. Someone trying to stop you.
That sounds like a goal for Gogo Fang's first down there in the Amazon.
Which would create its own problems because you can't just leave the Amazon at that point. Go, hey, Gogo, I'm just here for a fun weekend. No. You owe him a tour. He's got folks to hunt people down when they skip out on tours.
He's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean you're leaving to go find a lizard?
We need stories, damn it.
Hey, if you make your patrol, find your stupid lizard, I don't care. But once you're done finding your lizard, you're not going home.
At first.
No, you got another 6 months here.
That means the Mokole would have way more stories than the Garu do.
No, it's their job.
Yep.
But
and you also have to take into account the Bastet, who's the keeper of secrets. Think about how many of those that they've not spread, not shared with the rest of the rest of the Pharaoh.
Well, they did get fired for it.
Because they were too good at their job.
Yeah, they wouldn't tell Guy the secrets. That's why we have Korax.
blurt out everything.
Right.
Well, there you go. Just go talk to Korax.
Yeah, Korax. We look at the different Pharaoh episodes we did with the Korax. They'll trade things for secrets. They'll trade secrets for shiny things, even.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a diamond necklace. Here, I got a story for you.
Just a fake diamond necklace.
Whatever.
Just some marbles. Just fucking spill.
Marvels.
Anything that glints.
you could do it that way too. You could use that for a silver record. That'd be cool.
But I mean, it's it's interesting you bring up the Farah grant because I mean there are some accounts of Farah in the silver record, but ultimately it's a Garu history.
Right.
So it's always been presented through the lens of the Garu.
So how many of the other Farah stories are they interested in?
Well, I mean, there's no way
to know for sure.
Yeah, we can't quantify any of that shit.
No, I know. That was kind of the point of bringing the question up.
But obviously, I mean, there's tales from the times of War of Rage. Certainly, there are examples of because of the nature of the silver record, a sept in like Boise. I don't know why I'm choosing, but
it doesn't matter.
A sept in Boise might have an old get who retired, who's running a sept position there that used to run in the Amazon or something, and he has a story about some Bastet, which are held by the Galliards there, which creeps into their copy, if you will, of the silver record.
So not everyone's going to have that story.
Right. It's not like you're going on to the silverrecord.com.
Sure Glasswalkers don't have that going on?
I doubt that. I mean, there's GW.net, so maybe...
Right. They might have a little side section.
They could. But, your average Garu isn't going to have fucking silver record creepypasta, is my point.
Nice reference.
Thank you. So,
you also have to think about that Worm Takes Last. He has a bunch of scrolls and information squirreled away. Like, he doesn't carry the entire silver record with him everywhere he goes. It's just too much to carry.
I was going to ask that. Is he secretly hiding these, and he's the only one that knows the locations? Like, how's that working out?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly safe houses, for lack of a better term.
That's exactly what I was thinking. He's probably storing them. Different safe houses, different places he's been. Maybe he only knows about.
Which is dangerous in of itself, but if you follow if you follow the prophecy, he's like the final war keeper anyway, so it's not like anyone's going to pick it up after he goes. I don't know.
I mean, unless he feels like picking up a young cub to train.
Possibly. Very easily.
But which again would... And that's the thing, it kind of spoils the broth. This is a problem I have with the idea of moving Werewolf to more modern days. Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys know how I feel I keep it set in the 90s in the first place. But there was such a ticking clock over Werewolf the Apocalypse that, and more so than any other game, that the longer this goes on without happening, the more it kind of cheapens everything that came before it. So, like, if Worm Takes Last takes on an apprentice, he's no longer Worm Takes Last. He's Worm Takes somewhat before last. He's no longer the final record keeper. That cheapens his position in the world.
Well, say he doesn't, but somebody just takes up his mantle anyway.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could happen and probably should, but now we're screwing with the prophecy and some of the mystical elements of the game, and it gets kind of wishy-washy for me.
I get it. And where else are you going to keep the history going, especially if the game's going to keep going?
Right, but you can keep the game going, but don't keep the clock running.
Yes, I get it. I like it. I just think of... this guy's silver record might be a little different than that guy's silver record kind of thing. Because he doesn't have all the same stories.
Right. It's so like the true silver record, if you want to put a fucking quotes around it, you can't quantify it. It's everywhere. It's everything. There isn't a one version, right. Except what Worm Takes Last is trying to do.
So not everyone has access to it, though. And that's what's crazy to me.
All you can do is spread the stories as best as you can. The various versions and try to find the meaning in them. And because it's not like a history book. It's not like on this day at this time, this Garu was awesome.
It's meant to teach lessons in honor and wisdom.
Yeah, I mean it's a collection of experiences. It's a look to the past, and yeah, they're embellished, but the point of the story is more important than that's human thinking. Of the time X and time place and here's what actually happened. What's not so much important is the lesson, is the feeling, is the experience.
And I think that's kind of the whole purpose of the episode at that point, is because we're not talking about the silver record, the book. We're talking about the silver record, the meaning behind the part of the game, because of their lessons.
It's true. I mean, to pull another quote from the source book.
Okay.
And I like this one too. It's got the silver record. It's got a reputation that in some ways outstrips the deeds contained within. Some consider it a Bible, others a fable, and still others an Academy Award for killing people. But the true silver record is none of these things. Rather, it's a combination of history, behavior guide, family album, and gospel. It's a roadmap of our people and an account of where we've been.
That's heavy.
I love it.
And then I think it perfectly states just how important the record can be.
Very much. It kind of bumps me out that, like, not everyone's going to know what all is in there. But how else do you do that? How else do you put all of that in everybody's head?
And that's the thing. I mean, how do you... Is that it's not even possible.
Right.
I mean, even with the rights that they've used to, get the Silver Record to be the way it is, and the glyphs to kind of be able to basically imprint the story into your head as you read them. I mean, they have to physically take the Silver Record around to every single member of the Guru Nation to read it that way, because it's not like, like he was saying, they can't just look it up on the internet and then assimilate it. And then if it's in glyph form, they can't really read it like that anyway. It's not traditionally written, so it has to be conveyed through the spiritual essence of the glyphs. So if you're not actually there, it doesn't matter.
And how it's conveyed from one Garu to another could be a little different, could be a lot different.
One giant game of telephone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just comes back down to it's still fucking telephone.
More often than not, it's not. The exact details are less important.
I could argue that, like Croatan sacrifice.
Okay, but I mean, what's the worthier part there? That the tribe came together as one to nobly sacrifice themselves for the greater good to stop the Eater of Souls from destroying everything, or that runs through the sand, was here at noon, and, he brought chicken cordon bleu for everybody, and then he helped coordinate the dance that was used for the ritual. Like, which one's more important?
I get what you're saying.
I was hoping you have somewhat of an argument for it. Or he just bat you down right away.
He bat me down right away. Nope.
It was
I
really,
mean,
it was
it
a
goes
chicken
back to
cordon
like
bleu.
how the Mokale use Menesis. I mean, they don't. It's the memory, but they don't memorize every minute detail of an event. Like, you don't have the Mokale that are remembering the time of the Dragon Kings, remembering that they ate that nice shiny fruit off the tree and it tasted sweet. They remember the big ass rock coming down from the sky and wiping them out.
I remember that when we did the fair episode, and I was looking up on the Menesis and what they're doing, and because all they do is see glimpses of those stories. So how they perceive it could be different from even another Mokale.
Right. And the reality of the situation as well.
Yeah, it could be totally different from any of it. Oh, they just saw these glimpses, but that's not really what happened.
So the Silver Record is going to fall underneath the same type of restrictions and constraints.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, that's something the Nemesis we will get into during our Tammy T-Rex episode. So go back to the Mokale. I couldn't help myself, I'm sorry.
Well done.
Isn't that the fair he had a hot take on?
Yeah,
Yes. Doesn't mean I don't remember shit.
it was a really hot take,
It was
too.
very...
See, the fact that I had the hot take makes people remember it? Screw you.
fair.
We had a couple of people say they specifically aren't listening to the show anymore because of that hot take.
Did we really?
Yeah.
Whatever. Fine. Some random guy who happens to be on a podcast doesn't like your favorite Pharaoh. Okay.
That's a lot of our criticism. Not yours specifically.
I know, but it's ridiculous. Sorry, my opinion's not the same as yours.
We're just having fun.
Sorry, I love the Mokale, even if you don't like them. So
See, so we got some love for the dinosaurs somewhere in our extended family here.
Again, it was more of, I didn't like what they did with them because dinosaurs are fucking cool. I like that history part of them. It's like, that's...
And see, for me, and this is, in keeping with us that we're going to stay so tightly on topic,
I don't know how to do that.
is that I don't like dinosaurs. And that's my problem with them, is where crocodiles or where gators, I thought they were super cool.
I get it.
And then, now they're kaiju, and I'm not into it.
That was partially the reason I didn't like them either, but again, it's...
But they'll get their due in a fair shake at a later episode this season, probably.
Probably. Either way,
Yeah.
it's future
we got a
problems.
lot of stuff down the road.
Yeah, we do. But
Future problems.
Don't worry, folks. They'll get their fair shake.
Maybe another hot take, too.
So
Back
the
to
Silver Record.
Silver Record. Much like Menesis and how it's perceived differently from somebody different compared to each and every time. I just think maybe sometimes there should be more there. And sometimes some of these stories should be passed down that aren't.
Well, I'll tell you, and I think you guys know, I'm a big fan of the idea of hidden lore or a truth behind a story.
Yes.
For example, the idea of the War of Rage as we know it, if perhaps there were like a more savage version of that that we didn't know about, that for some reason is being hidden, is being obfuscated from the Gyro Nation or from the world as a whole.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a dot connect that I have in my brain made that is not related to Savage Age. But, I like the idea of Savage Age being canon. So at my table it is. But it also isn't. Because the question becomes... Right, the question becomes, what the fuck happened during my fictional Savage Age continuity that has caused the need for this cover-up?
I don't know. What did happen?
I don't know either.
You just like having the
I like that
thought
idea.
there.
Look, we haven't played a game since Savage Age was a thing in our world.
Holy shit, yeah.
He's got a point on that one.
So I have time to figure it out.
Why haven't you figured it out yet, for?
But Grant, what do you think about that? What do you think about where I'm going with that?
I mean, that sounds pretty freaking awesome, honestly, because you can go in so many different directions. Like every time we speak about it, when we actually have an episode, there's so much untapped potential that we've tried to engineer with Savage Age and give so many ideas to random storytellers to kind of explain this, that, or the other, to articulate whatever you wanted at your own table. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what parts of the Savage Age that you've basically calcified into your actual table canon, and see what you kind of gloss over or ignore. Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. I think that's just going to be fantastic. Especially how much love you have for the Grounder. I think that's going to be great.
Grounder did kick ass. But there you go. That idea of maybe
Bridging that gap?
Bridging that gap, yeah. And again, like why is it a secret?
Because we did something wrong.
Or someone did something wrong. It doesn't necessarily... In fact, I'd rather it not be the Gyro for a change.
That would be nice.
They get blamed for a lot of shit because they win.
It's fair.
You ain't kidding.
It's like, the Gyro were monsters because of the War of Rage. They didn't... People fought back. This was on both sides.
They just
because they win doesn't make them the bad guys.
So I think that the most awesome potential that you could have with that, in line with the Silver Record and the Tales of the Gru, that they've kind of had a string go along the entire second and third edition, is if you look at the Tales of the Gru for all the changing breeds, you have Old Man Miniskins, or Laughing Miniskins is what he was known back in the Wild West. He's kind of ferreting out these secrets of the changing breeds, and he alludes that the Noisha kind of have a hidden history of not only the Guru Nation, but all of the different changing breeds. You could really take that angle and look at the Coyotekin, which for the Savage Age, not out yet, but we are working on it probably next year sometime. See what the Coyotes have actually figured out back then and see what that type of connections, and that would draw a massive parallel between the modern era, the Silver Record and Tales of the Guru, and then Savage Age as well.
Oh, I absolutely see it that way.
I like that idea. I like that. I know this isn't really what but fuck it, we're doing it.
It's there now.
Yeah, it's too late. I love that idea that maybe whatever the thing was the Noisha's fault.
Or
maybe
it?
Coyotes specifically. And they're the ones responsible for hiding it.
There's got to be a reason.
Is a breed, they're certainly clever enough.
There has to be a reason that Luna did not give full auspice spectrum to the Coyotekin or the Nagalu, the direwolves in Savage Age. So there's a potential story there.
Could answer why there can only be 100 of them.
Could be related to. What if it's the Noisha's fault? Or a coyote. It could specifically be coyote.
Yeah.
So the Silver Record.
Well, see, I'm taking this as the War of Rage is happening, right? And some are trying to cover up those secrets. What if the War of Rage was taking so much precedence that others couldn't have time to keep those secrets, or to get that lore down, or to keep the history going?
Well, I think it's certainly true that a lot of knowledge would be lost to casualties of war.
Right.
But I think whatever the event would be, this is so not the episode.
But we can make it, though.
But no, this is already a Silver Record episode.
I know.
We are going back to it. I swear to God, guys, we're going to go back to it.
But that's my
point. We're going to take
point.
another couple minutes here.
Maybe that person was trying to get that information to the Silver Record, but casualties of war.
I mean, certainly. But
Maybe it's the dot connect he's trying to make, but yes.
yeah, we're just going to take it and move on because I could spend another 20 minutes
I
on this
know.
particular thing.
Yeah, this is a good speculation.
right.
We should have an episode on this.
We're gonna go back to it.
So the Silver
Holy
Record.
shit. So the Savage Age.
You heard of that one yet, Grant?
Oh god, yeah, we're gonna do a big Savage Age speculation episode like soon now because I'm really into that.
Yeah, me
Sweet.
too.
Grant, you want to come back for that one?
Yeah, I mean, sure, definitely. As long as it's open my schedule, I'm game.
Well, if not, we'll just get Kaysen.
That works too.
Oh, shots fired.
Get them both.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We'll call it a dance party. We get all the Chris's in here.
The Chris dance off.
And when you say this, to weaponized ink RAI roundtable day,
That would be fun.
right?
That'd be
Yeah.
chaotic.
Be a long episode.
Yeah.
Prepare for like a 4-hour motherfucker on that one.
Jesus.
Make sure you bring your dictionary.
I'm gonna need it. There'll be a lot of big words.
We're getting an air horn when you guys get too geeky.
That ends up being 20 minutes of the episode. It's just air horn.
Yeah, and me and Kaysen start talking about Savage Age and science and archaeology. It's just going to devolve into craziness.
Yeah, you get, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You get too sciencey, we'll bust out the air horn.
More specifically to wake up Dan.
But back to the actual subject at hand.
Yes.
This has been a lot of fun, and oh my god, we're going to go back to it in a
Oh,
different
yeah,
episode. But
definitely.
back to it. Let's talk about the type of stories in applications of the Silver Record. I mean, obviously, pulling a couple chestnuts out for a moot is a good idea. And from a storyteller perspective, from an actually forming the shit, you have the Legends of the Garou stories in the front of every damn book.
Right.
And they're not all great. They're not all appropriate. You have something like the story Falling Down, for example, which was in the front of the Fianna book, Fianna Tribe Book 2, the revised one.
Okay.
And it's a good story, don't get me wrong.
I'm trying to remember that one specifically.
Well, it focuses on family life and death. It's a story that takes place before a battle and then after a battle, and how the Fianna honor their dead and their casualties.
Okay, I'm remembering that one. Yeah, I like that one a lot. That was
It's a really good story, but I don't think it's a Silver Record appropriate story.
See, I tend to disagree when it comes to those.
All right, what you got?
So, and here's the reason why. So, yeah, I totally concur that most of the stories in the Silver Record should be overall stories for the Garou Nation as a whole. But when it comes to certain ones like that kind of really succinctly articulate what a tribe is all about and it's like the spirit and feel of the tribe, I think it should be included in the Silver Record. Especially if you think in game, you have Worm Takes Last. He's going around to the various septs and things like that. He's going to have to pick and choose his audience a little bit, the stories he's going to use. So he's not going to read the entire Silver Record every single cairn he goes to. He's going to be like, okay, I'm at a Fianna cairn. How do I start getting these guys' attention? How do I bridge this gap? Well, here, I'm going to take this story of the Fianna that they can take pride in, that makes them feel all warm and gushy, and then we can go on into the more important things.
I agree with you. I just think that this particular story isn't appropriate just on the grounds of how the story itself is. Yeah, I'm very specific because I do agree. And even an idea of a story that focuses on family life and death and has a place in the record.
Especially
Just
being
this-
important to Fianna themselves.
Right, but this particular story, here's the thing before the battle, and I'm super Cliff's Notes here. And here here's the pack, and we're going off to battle the next day. And then he's the one who comes back. And he's the only one. And it's really the interaction between him and his uncle about, no, you drink to the fallen and here's why. But it's so individually specific. The battle isn't even really relevant. It's just the aftermath and how he personally dealt with it. It's overly specific that I don't think it belongs in there because it's not like here's the great deed he did or whatever. It just focuses predominantly on the conversations between
Of the
him
one single
right
person.
Yeah,
One single
I just think it's too narrow in scale, but I think there's room for that type of story certainly.
Yeah, because there's good lessons in that.
I agree.
It's just, it is too narrow.
Yeah, make it more about what the pack did and the entire sept and how they handled it, rather than this one single cub.
Right, like there are other versions that get that message across in a more, in a broader way, for a greater audience.
I agree. And yes, I see why Grant would say yes, that's important for it to be, but I think it's only important if you're doing it the broader version.
Good way to describe the tribe, the way they handle everything.
No, sure, like I agree on all counts. I just think it's this specific story I have issue with. And again, I don't have issue with, I like the story.
It's a good story.
I really like the story, just not in the context of being in the Silver Record.
I remember it was like more celebrating his life rather than mourning the death.
Which is great.
Yeah. Look at all the fucking cool shit that guy did.
We got a page count here.
Only have so many skins to write on.
Right? Like there's only so many spirals. You think they grow on trees? No, that's paper, stupid. Get it together.
Growing pits.
Paper grows on trees. Okay.
I know what I said. Yeah.
Well, I also think maybe even some of the spirals who were Galliards and were holding on to stories for Silver Record and maybe got changed, converted, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, imagine those ramifications.
That's,
you have Galliard fell, and then he twisted his story to make it seem like the Worm is a good guy.
Well,
and then it becomes propaganda.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you.
Well, now, and let's I'm going to take that. Let's bump this up a notch. Yeah, the Galliard fell. He's got this extensive knowledge of the record. But what does he do? He gets himself a Bane tattoo or a Bane mask or one of these things that masks his fucking worm taint. And he goes back to the Nation as a sleeper to twist those Silver Record stories and teach the wrong lessons.
That makes too much sense on how well that could happen.
Right? Like, forget keeping him in the hive to preach. Now send him back to the children of Gaia. Give him finish to mask the worm taint, and there's precedence for it all over the place, where he could sit there and spin the Gaian gospel through the eyes of the worm and fuck up a whole generation of Garu.
Yeah. I mean, you have that one story in the Silver Record where they're talking about the Silver Fang that kind of sparked the War of Rage, kind of like got the flood of Scarlet Sorrow started, right? He basically was in front of everybody, he raised the cry, he held up the skulls of his slaughtered enemies, he read the names of the other breeds, and then like wet his claws in his own bloody chest, and then repeated it again. You know, it's this massive call to war, morale-boosting type speech. Maybe the reality of it was that he did all this, and then everyone else around him seeing the shame and the pride and the horror in what he had done, and it could have went in a different direction. But instead, you have this fallen Galliard going around, spewing out this twisted form of the tale. So instead of them seeing that, hey, this is something we should learn from, and not follow in these footsteps of pride and make these same mistakes, instead it sees this big thing that's like, oh yeah, we should be prideful of this Silver Fang, taking front and center and being a good general and call to war.
It's a regular Krager worm foe.
Is that the Silver Record?
It isn't Silver Record.
No Krager Worm from the Death Bear, is he?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
But see, it could be. Could be in someone's version. I know in
someone's version, right?
In the Legends of Garu, it wasn't a very popular story.
Yeah, it's kind of looked down upon.
It was a little controversial when it was told in the contents of that Legends of the Garu, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not in there.
But look how important it is.
Hard truths.
Right.
Or maybe it's not true, but probably, because it wasn't very well received, people weren't happy to hear it. Probably true. Doesn't make the Garu look good. Don't tell it at the moot. No one's happy.
Right.
Probably true.
All the more reason it should be in there then.
Right? I mean, there's other stories like I think of it. This was from the Get book. Was the tale of Uli Brightjaws, who
I don't remember this one.
And again, super paraphrasing because not a book report.
Right.
You know, who went wandering, who felt unworthy.
Oh, okay. I do remember this one. Never mind.
You know, and he was searching out his weakness.
Yeah.
This was a big deal, and he went on this quest and came face to face with Fenris, who ripped his fucking heart out.
Yep.
Spat it on the ground and said, "That's your weakness, is your self-doubt. Fuck you. You doubt me? I said you're a Get a Fenris. You're doubting me?"
No, I remember that one specifically. I love that one because he kept going on and looking. I am not strong enough. I am not strong enough. What do I need to do to become strong enough? And he keeps looking and finally goes to Fenris and he goes, "All right, fine, you're not strong enough." Boom. It's, as you read it, the ending of the story is not what you fucking would ever guess. Yeah, expect either. Yeah, you wouldn't guess that.
It's worth the read, but I mean, I think that's a good example in contrasting with the Fiano one, where it teaches a lesson in that. There's a moral to that story and something to grab onto, which is, so I think that should be in the record.
Now it just took me a
Fenner's
second.
such an ass.
He was teaching a lesson.
Definitely taught a lesson.
The weakness was within his heart.
Yeah, it took me a second to realize which story you're talking about when you said Bright Jaws. But yeah, it's like he rips his heart right out of his chest. Like, what
How does
the
that
fuck?
lesson get told if he gets killed, though?
Who said he got killed?
I mean, if he rips his heart out of his chest, maybe he was living long enough to tell the story
Look,
to
it's not a
somebody
book
else.
report. It's in the Get book. You know where to find it.
Legends, man, it gets passed down.
I guess Fenner told the story.
Maybe.
It's in the book.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely agree that most of the stories in the Silver Record should have some type of moral or some type of purpose behind them being spread. I mean, I see it as basically the Aesop's fables of the Guru Nation. That's how I normally treat the Silver Record in game.
No, I'm with you there. And I mean, you know, it's like that quote I did earlier. It's like, yeah, it's a roadmap for the people, but it's so that means that there's room for stories that aren't necessarily is on the nose with a lesson, but it's a story that needs to be worth telling. You're not going to hear, you certainly shouldn't, okay? There shouldn't be a record or an entry in the Silver Record of the time that Gree Hunts the Hunted bought some laundry detergent. or the time that Mother Larissa made some kick-ass flapjacks. That, there's no point to that story. Like, it doesn't have to be world-changing here. But why did you just talk for 10 minutes? There should be a point.
But then you look at other, I want to say meta characters, and especially the higher rank ones, or maybe even the ones who are just that known, and maybe some of those stories should be in Silver Record. Rather than...
I don't think Mother Larissa's flapjack recipe needs to be in the Silver Record.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
But maybe how she got all of some people to rally together to...
Eat some flapjacks.
Shut up. I'm fine. Maybe how her words just rallied all of her people together to defend whatever area. I'm thinking of shit off the top of my head here, but
Well, certainly, and I'm going to back you up here, believe it or not.
thanks.
You're welcome.
About time.
Wasn't expecting it.
I wasn't expecting it.
Well, I mean, certainly there are rank 6 Garu out there. And they don't have to necessarily be rank 6, but names that are that big. That obviously they deserve their time in the sun.
Yes. Yeah.
They've earned that position, and there are reasons why they've done it. There are stories out there that need to be told that should be passed down because of that. Absolutely. Again, not everything.
No.
As much as I think the Margrave is as much as the Margrave is a badass, not I mean, that's just a fact. As great as the Margrave is, European coalition, dude, his track record speaks for itself. But as great as he is, we don't need the story about how awesome it is that he took a dump once.
That's where you went with that.
Massive
Figuratively
six-longer.
and literally, actually. Because I'm sure there are some galliards out there who have written a story about how his shit doesn't stink. See what I did there?
Just wow. Just wow.
Yeah, I set that up.
I'm with you on that too, Grant. Just wow.
You're welcome.
How long have you been holding on to that?
I just did it. You know how long. You just saw it.
So here's what I would really like to see in a game, in a chronicle when it comes to Silver Record. You have Worm Takes Last, right? And then you have, on the flip side of the whole equation, you have the Chronicles of the Black Labyrinth. And, the Black Spirals, they have their own galliards and their own boardkeepers. I would be interested in seeing what Worm Takes Last would do with the information if he happened to come across a copy of the Chronicles of the Black Labyrinth, or vice versa. How would they twist or purify those books for the others?
To add to that, too, we're giving alternate pathing on that. Because you have the Chronicle of the Black Labyrinth. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We've talked about that recently. No, I know you know that. But, so it's gotten some reference recently. And we'll have an episode on it in the future as well, because it's a big deal book. But not only that, the idea of the hunt for a final copy that's in the world, but the spiral equivalent to the Silver Record, which is not the same as the Black Labyrinth, let's be clear.
No, I know what you mean.
And we don't even know that they have one, but certainly they have one. They're Garu.
Yeah, they have some kind of lore behind them.
They have to. So
What's it called though?
whatever you want to at that point, because
The Green Record.
The Green.
the Tome of the Corruptor, the
We have to think the Black Spirals think that they're correct. They
Right.
don't see themselves as the bad guys.
Oh, they're the
Right.
heroes of their own story.
it is every
You know,
good villain.
So it's going to be their book is going to be like their own. This is why it is. This is why we're right. This is why we are true. This is why our path is the right path and why theirs is wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, it would just be, again, it would probably be akin the Silver Record, just from their side, their stories. I don't know if I would call it, what you would call it, but I think that's immaterial.
Yeah, no, I get it.
You
It's not important what they'd call it. Just know it exists.
I would call the story or chronicle etched in balefire.
Ooh, I like that.
Right? That just came to me. It's like, oh no, I want to say that out loud.
So now you do have a name for it.
I think I do.
It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah,
Fond of the name, obviously. Anything etched in, I'm going to be a big fan of.
Oh, yeah, how about that? Yeah. I guess that's where that came from. Oops, sorry, Grant. There's a prime example of how Inspirato can accidentally have you ape a thing. Not intentional.
Oh, of course not.
But we talk about, the different sources. We have all those legends of the Garu. We also have source books out there, and not even source books, but novels you can lean into. I mean, I haven't read them, so I can't. The tribal novels leading into the apocalypse, the official canon apocalypse. I didn't read them. I couldn't get my hands on them in the day, and it's like there's a point where it's too late now, and I'm not going to run that anyway. But there are other novels. You've got When Will You Rage, which was a collection of short stories that came out of the first edition era. So there's some wonkiness here and there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yep.
But
It's
still,
a good book.
yeah, it's some good stories in there. And I think chief among them, and it's not just one story, but peppered through that book is the formation of the Coyote Full Moon Pack, who I don't think ever did anything again, which is a bummer, because it was really interesting how these different Garu were being chosen, and were, it was like the origin story. It was almost like the fucking MCU of Werewolf beforehand. You got like the origin stories of these cubs coming in and how like, oh, they're destined for the Coyote Full Moon Pack, and then like we never fucking hear about it again. It's like, I want to hear about the Coyote Full Moon Pack.
Maybe
Continue
that should
those
be-
stories.
Maybe that should be the Silver Record.
If it's important enough that they're naming it before they're formed, yes, it should be in the Silver Record, and I want to hear more about those stories.
I want to hear why they were formed.
Exactly. We never,
Yeah, but there's no mention of
like,
it
if it's
ever
another
again.
book somewhere, please tell me, because I don't recall ever seeing anything about the Coyote Full Moon Pack again outside of When We Rage. Sad.
That's a cool one. That'd be cool to hear. Or if no one's heard of it, and because it doesn't exist, and someone's written it, I'd love to hear that too, please.
That'd be neat.
So here's another story, and I guess because this one comes from the Rage cards,
Oh, okay.
right? There's a few different Rage cards that really, at least I don't know of, and I know you don't know of, but you have all the books, so you would think. But with the Rage card, the Bones of Shakarheim.
Bones of Shakar Hind. Love it.
Grant, do you know of any of the other books that have that in there? Or is it just a Rage card exclusive?
So I think a lot of that Rage card stuff, I mean, outside of the Warriors of the Apocalypse book, which was kind of like a companion book to the Rage game, or rather standalone. They were really trying to get Rage to kind of come into its own and stand up and be its sort of its own thing, but not really its own thing. So they are canon. Everything in the Rage cards are canon, technically.
Right.
Unless there's a distinct conflict. And then if there's a conflict, I think the tabletop trumps Rage,
I'd agree with that.
which there shouldn't be that many of them. If it's in Rage, it's brought up in Rage as being like, hey, this happened at this point in time, it's pretty much guaranteed to be a Rage-only thing, unless the book comes out afterwards, which there's not too many that really come out after Rage really got going and dropped off. There's only a small window that it was actually real active, a couple of years.
Which is unfortunate. I was hip to that when it was going on.
I mean, it just didn't have
Smokes too much.
the opportunity to really close that circle. 1999 was a crazy year. Things just happened really quick for White Wolf at that time.
That's completely understandable.
Yeah, sure. And again, I think the Bones of Shekar Hind is, for those of you who don't know, it is a Rage card. It was a fetish. They tried to make Werewolf the card game So you have your gift cards, Blur the Milky Eyes a card, all of that stuff. But the Bones of Shekar-Hind was a card that allowed you to take control of worm creatures. And essentially, I'm going to attack your character. Well, no, here's the Bones of Shekar-Hind. I'm going to pull this Nexus Crawler out to fight in my stead. And it was like it was one per game kind of thing, like it says in the damn card.
It's that strong, yeah.
Like it's in that deck right over there.
And if the Rage cards are canon...
Well, I can decide that they're canon.
Right.
But, yeah, it doesn't appear anywhere
that we know
in the
of.
books that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible it's put in a book that I have skimmed through and didn't catch it, but I don't believe it.
They're lost in the abyss, that's all. Nobody's found them yet.
Or somewhere else, but what I had done is I had attached a history to this fetish. I created the legend of Shekar-Hind, the Bane Tender, this powerful Thurge who was so good with spirits.
So this isn't meta, I thought.
No, this isn't meta.
Oh, man, I thought this was.
No.
The card itself, again, is canon because it's in the Rage game.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
So I created Shekar-Hind, and she got so powerful that she could even command worm spirits would do her bidding. And then through that, she too got corrupted. But so powerful that when she died, her bones itself held power. Those became fetishes for the worm. And maybe some guys would get a hand, but then ultimately get corrupted. So they ended up having to track down her bones and destroy them all. And what's left is the hand bones on like a series of rings, like a chime, like a wind chime, if you will.
Which I think that's the picture of the card.
Yeah, which is the picture on the card.
I can go through the deck very quick and look for it, but it's not necessary right now.
They can't see it. So
right, exactly.
And so now that's this legendary lost fetish that if you hold it, you can control, just as the card said, you can control worm spirits. They're just at your command, like puppets.
I thought that was meta.
It is for us.
Yeah, it's Porter's own headcanon. It's our game.
Well, he spun it so good, I thought it was meta. I thought it was part of it. I thought it was.
Don't thank you. But I mean, that's something that would go in the Silver Record.
Oh, for sure.
She cries ice in the Narthelis.
Yes, but the Bones of Shekar-Hind, would it be in the Silver Record? Maybe they're afraid to put it in the Silver Record because they're afraid some other Garou would go look for it and be just too focused on that.
No, you leave it as a cautionary tale about getting too close to the worm and too arrogant in your practices as a Thurge.
Well, I agree with
too
it.
close to the sun. That's an Icarus tale.
I agree. I'm just throwing the devil's advocate side of it out.
No, I get that, but you're squaring up. We're going to go.
I mean, we got skin dancers for a reason, so.
Yeah, I mean, that type of fetish, if it was actually in the tabletop RPG, would be a very high-level fetish. And, I mean, if it's a fetish that's that powerful, any fetish that the creation of, or the story behind it, may or may not, have a good argument to be included in the Silver Record for how it became a fetish.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that was my exact point of bringing it up.
I mean, at that point, it's like a legendary thing. I mean, you look at Hammer and Clave, and they tell stories about the first Clave, which I hate, by the way. But not the book, the first Clave now.
I know what you mean, yeah.
It's like a little stick with a little silver nub, and it can make Gaia go Super Saiyan and swallow the earth if you want it to. None of that's actual audio.
Tom's a little confused.
Yeah, Tom, I just broke Tom's head for a second. None of that, it doesn't say that in the book.
Okay.
But it gives examples of super over-the-top stuff that Clave could potentially do. It's like, well, maybe it just was a shitty little silver knife. Maybe it's not Excalibur.
Yeah, so the first Clave actually would have been Flint anyway. I really like the fact that the Glasswalkers, they think that the story itself is just a parable, even though there's a lot of other tribes that think that the sword is still actually out there and can exist. So I think the story of the first Clave is really useful for the Silver Record, but it kind of creates this MacGuffin for these packs and tribes to be going after, we find this mythical sword, we're going to automatically win the Apocalypse War. So I think it's kind of a red herring in the Silver Record as well.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking. The same with the Bones of Shekar-Hind.
Right.
Do they exist or not? Was there truth to it? I mean, because it's all my canon at that point. I made the fucking legend of.
Right.
Yeah, it was true. Do the bones still exist?
Oh.
Yeah, no.
In the abyss.
But again, the MacGuffin's more important, just like the first Clave. My issue there isn't with the legend or it being in the Silver Record. It's the practical application of it is some sort of super Excalibur win the day sword, and that's silly.
Win the day.
You know, whether it's Duke or Flint or Lady J,
The 3Bs.
the 3Bs. But that's the first clip again, you know, because Red Herring Story, it's a great thing. You look at some of the other novels out there, like Breathe Deeply. I absolutely love Breathe Deeply. I don't know how that looks as a story in the Silver Record, but I absolutely love that story. And if you guys get a chance to read that book, absolutely read it. It's a quick read. You'll get through it quick. You know, deals with Roshan One Arm and the One Arm Pack.
The One Arm Pack?
Yeah, Roshan's a total badass. He is my favorite Silver Fang. And I just said I have a favorite Silver Fang.
Oh,
I heard.
So
does the entire pack only have one arm?
That would be
Each?
very
It's weird.
I
mean,
Are they
it's just
Transformers?
And I'll form the head.
So it's ironic that you brought up that novel, because that novel is like the tie-in novel between like the actual tabletop and then the Rage game.
Yeah, most,
you have-
if not all of that pack is in the Rage cards.
Yeah, that's the tie-in between the two games. And then the companion for the tabletop RPG for that, you know, I think it's like second or third at that point, is Rage Across the Amazon. Rage Across the Amazon is meant to be read along with Breathe Deeply.
I can see that for sure. I mean, most of it takes place in the Amazon. But there are things like that. You know, when you talk about Rage Across the Amazon, of course there would be tales of the War of the Amazon, which again would link back to involving Tales of Other Farah too, because that makes that easier.
And because there is the Ahandi, and we know that.
I mean, it's not the War of the Amazon, but yes, that's another great example.
Another example.
Yeah,
Yes.
another great example of places where it's clear that there should be Farah involved in some of these stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think about, you know, the conflict in Chicago, which I know was brought up in our Discord somewhat recently at the time of this recording,
Okay,
not at the time of the airing.
gotcha.
And I wish I could remember who it was, because they were talking about more information in the Chicago conflict, and I completely forgot that Under a Blood Red Moon was a book. But I completely forgot about it. And so whoever it was asking for more information, and it's like, you should have pointed to the book, and I just forgot it existed completely until I started doing research for this episode. So oops on that.
Yeah.
But again, the Chicago conflict was kind of a big deal. Certainly it should be there.
Yeah, I think it's Kaiju was the one that was talking about it, because he's doing a chronicle based in or she, I don't know
No,
I don't know who the person actually is, but anyway, they're doing a story in Chicago, and so they was asking about it. So I know me and Lyrics was talking about the fact that Chicago has really been hit from the vampire side of the house, so that they could reference that as well. But then, yeah, you're right. You have Under the Blood Red Moon, and then a bunch of other tangential books for Chicago.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about the other ones, but I have a copy of Under the Blood Red Moon on the shelf over there. But it's like one of those books, like say Ways of the Wolf, where it comes up so rarely, I just forgot it fucking existed. For Ways of the Wolf, I didn't though, because False Wendigo is always in my heart. Not literally, but I love that.
No, literally.
I love the concept of False Wendigo.
He's literally in your heart.
Is he?
Yeah.
Damn it! I gotta go to the doctor.
Yeah, you might want to.
Would False Wendigo be in the Silver Record?
I would like to say no, but yes.
But yes.
I would like to say no on the grounds that
They don't know him?
the more widely False Wendigo is known about, the less successful False Wendigo is a thing.
There we go.
There has to be a tale of the False Wendigo in the Silver Record somewhere.
Making him
Because
no longer viable.
Right, it would be so rare to happen. Clearly, there is a SEP somewhere that has that story on tap about the horror of False Wendigo and not falling for that trap. But it's got to be like only one, because if it's not only one and it's everywhere, it's never going to work again.
That's awesome. But I was trying to bring that around earlier, as far as some have their version of Silver Record compared to others, and they don't have those same stories. It's kind of where I was trying to lead that into. I just didn't have a very good transition for it.
Well, and then you could also do the thing, you talk about different versions, is maybe there's a version of this tale of False Wendigo where they didn't figure out what the fuck happened.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, you know, this is the story of Larry, who just one day, his skin fucked off and he turned into an ice monster. It's crazy.
We didn't know what happened.
Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, moral of the story, keep your skin on, I guess.
Your skin on.
They just never figured it out. Keep your skin on,
Yep.
I guess.
Yep.
So I'm going to show my age here, and talk about a book that I always thought was kind of like a precursor to the Silver Record, that almost every tale from it could be used in-game as Silver Record tales, was Drums Around the Fire from Werewolf First Edition.
Drums is a good book.
I mean, every story in there it has some type of impact for the nation. You can just immediately use as something for the Silver Record.
You know, it's been a while since I cracked that book open. I was going to, but yesterday was very busy. Well, one of my favorite stories, and it's been many, many years since I've read it, so like I'm kind of calling you out on this one, but I'm not sure.
Maybe.
What about Apocalypse Noir? I am fairly certain that book has that story has zero larger repercussions, but it also happens to be my favorite story from that book. Yeah, it's the one by Bill Bridges.
So you're calling yourself out a little bit, is what you're saying.
Sounds like a book I need to read right now.
Drums Around the Fire is awesome.
Yeah. And then, of course, you've got, and I brought this up on our White Howler episode, was Who's Who Among the Garu Nation, also Garu Saga. Mm-hmm. It's a very, I don't know who chose to name the book, but I wish they would have rethought it. It's a very awkward title. But again, that's that book full of poems and stories detailing all the tribes. That's where the legend of Makma came from.
Right.
And again, everything in there should be in the Silver Record.
Maybe it was, but
Makma.
Well, maybe it was, but obviously it was burned down. Could have been one of the houses that got burned down.
It still can be. I mean, you know, that's the thing is there's no line in the front of these books that says this is in the Silver Record or this isn't.
That's true.
We're just talking about what maybe should and what maybe shouldn't. You know, and again, Mother Larissa's flapjack recipe,
which would probably be bomb.
No, I think it'd be garbage, possibly literally.
No, it'd probably taste good to you though. She uses right on it.
Have some some newspaper in there, a little cat litter, whatever she found. You know, I don't want to eat that.
Like pancakes.
I also don't like pancakes. That's true. So already it's a disaster.
So to really close the gap on that when it comes to your question about Apocalypse Noir and the various stories in Drums Around the Fire in general. So Apocalypse Noir is, if I remember right, it's the story by Bill Bridges where the Silver Fang is searching for, or the pack is searching for a lost Silver Fang fetish of some kind that was taken or possessed by Pentex. If I was going to bring that into my game as a story in the Silver Record, I would really articulate the futility of searching for something that was lost when the utility of it is minute, kind of like a wild goose chase. Like, why am I going to really have my pack going this wild goose chase with such a low probability of success instead of having them do something more constructive like, hey, take back this kern that fell into becoming a hive or whatever.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. And again, I preface with I might be misremembering this because I haven't read that book in at least 10 years. Just full disclosure. It was the Silver Fang hiring what I believe was a Bone Gnawer, may have been a Glass Walker private detective. I'm using my quotes there to retrieve this great fetish, which just turned out to be like her favorite paperweight.
So it was absolutely nothing.
It was absolutely nothing. She liked that little trinket, and it was stolen from her. So she sent this poor fucking guy through hell and back to get the thing he thought was some magical fetish that was just nothing.
Oh my god.
So for the Silver Record purposes, that would be like a story of warning of, hey, be smart, don't be a dumbass by getting people to waste resources for something that you just find sparkly and pretty.
I'll take your point there. I will offer, on the other hand, like, how you want to be that guy? Like, imagine that gets put in the Silver Record as a cautionary tale of don't be a dumbass, and like now his name's attached to it, even though he was just lied to.
Dumbass.
Yeah, even though he was lied to, though.
Right.
Like
he's the asshole now for doing the job right.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the Garu's rep. It doesn't matter.
I think of stories, again, stuff that we don't 100% know the answers to, but like Vic Stryker.
Love Vic Stryker.
Lost the wolf, but eventually gains it back.
Eventually, yeah, just before his end.
But we don't know how.
Active motherfucker in World War II. Came back from Hirano.
Right. But we don't know how he got the wolf back and how he beat Hirano. Why wouldn't that be in the Silver Record?
I mean, that's a good point, but at the same time, it's something that I feel like you can't put that in the Silver Record from a behind-the-scenes game mechanic standpoint, because you can't go, here's this tale of this really well-known Silent Strider. Someone who makes Shoe Horus look like he gives 0%.
Shoehorned him in there.
Just, yeah, I had to. Just like a total badass like Vic Stryker, right? So everyone knows who Vic Stryker is.
Right.
Or should. That's a name that should carry. So if we had the story of how he beat Hirano, then everyone would be able to beat Hirano. We go back to that again.
Okay.
And
I kind of saw it that way, but I just thought it was necessary to bring up.
No, I get you. But I mean, that's why we don't have that story, I think, from a mechanic standpoint, because then that takes that threat off the table permanently. It's like, oh, no, just drink some Gatorade. That's what Vic did.
He stubbed his toe and got rage back.
Had
Rub some dirt on it.
He watched snakes on a plane.
That's the electrolytes.
That's what planes crave.
See? But that's the thing is, no matter what this is what happened right now. So now this terrible thing is off the table. That's no good from a game standpoint.
No, I get it. It was necessary to bring up.
No, you're right. I'm on your side on this. Shit.
He's just shocked.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's plenty of stories, and we talk about different angles and different perceptions.
Right.
You even go into that source book, and there's different creation songs and stories. We know this story, Wormweaver, Wild Guy, great. There's 8 versions of that story, and there's more than that, really.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got a version of that shit. And I'm going to be the guy to bring this up. I thought Grant would have done this already. I'm very surprised at you, sir. Cain appears in the Silver Record.
No shit.
He does. I'm
going to hand that to you, Grant, because I know that's more your wheelhouse, and it's going to feel weird coming out of my mouth.
So yeah, it's actually towards the front of the Silver Record, and it's one of the few times that Werewolf acknowledges a vampire beyond, they're worm-tainted, go kill them, eat them now. Is they have a whole story at the beginning where the first man is he pleads to the Weaver that, hey, I don't want to die, and so she basically calcifies his body, his form, and puts him in stasis so that his spirit can't get out. And when he starts to rot, then she doubles down and makes it so that his body and everything just doesn't rot. And the worm sees this and is kind of like, he's the worm of balance at the time. It was like, what the fuck is that? That's definitely shouldn't be there. And he eats Cain. At the time, they call it the Bloody Man. And in the Silver Record, that's what it's referred to. Well, this Bloody Man, he's sitting there in the gullet of the worm. He can't die because the Weaver has made him completely static. So he can't die. He's just sitting there. So he's hungry. So what's he do? He starts feeding on the inside of the worm, biting and gnawing and drinking all the ichor that's inside the worm. And eventually, the different tales vary, but the worm either vomits him back up or he basically chews his way out, depending on which source you're looking at. I can't remember which is which. And then Cain goes on about his business and does vampire-y type things. But this internal wound of the worm is one of the things that actually helps him be weak and susceptible to being trapped by the Weaver.
It's worth noting to add to it. In the Silver Record, he's vomited out, but he's also cursed by the worm.
Okay.
Because you are a corrupt thing, you can't have children on your own. You can only do it through corruption.
Oh, okay.
Like the vampire-y things. And then, Helios gets involved. He goes, fuck you.
Oh.
Right, I'm going to burn you up. If I see you again, there's going to be some fucking violence.
Okay, so that's where the sunlight... Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I get that.
It's surprisingly neat, and I'm saying this about Dracula's.
It was just
I'm
funny.
shocked right now.
I guess about Dracula, the original, which is... I know what I did.
I'm just... as Grant's telling the story, I'm watching Tom's face, like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
I haven't heard this either, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then watching your facial expressions.
It's a story I made a point to brush up on before we recorded.
That's awesome.
But again, I knew, Grant, that's more your... So I was getting you the spotlight on that one.
Yeah, and I'm drawing parallels and actually mentioned the tale of the Bloody Man in Enoch by Night, that I'm writing right now, where that's kind of an understood thing. And then if you have people or player characters or NPCs in the game for Enoch at the time, and they go outside of the city, they may talk to kinfolk or whatever and kind of hear, oh, you're living in the city of the Bloody Man or whatever. Because there is some type of parallels to it. So I do mention it in Enoch by Night, and it's an awesome story. And it's one of those things that you can draw parallels between the creation myths and vampire of who these people were. In the vampire myth, he was cursed by God and cursed by the angels. So the angel of the light is the one that cursed him against the sun. As far as the werewolves see it, that's Helios. So there's a lot of parallels there that I found really, really interesting.
That's really cool.
And of course that
definitely deserves to be in the silver record.
it already is.
Yeah.
It's already in the book. It's
Yeah.
like page 20. I said don't quote that.
I,
It's in chapter 1.
okay, it's close enough then.
Close enough.
Right. But I mean, yeah, I think that's a great example of one. Albrecht's taking in the 7th generation.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's in there. I mean, it certainly should be.
Yeah.
The Silver Crown.
Yeah, I think kind of has to be.
Right.
But and let's bring this focus this back to a smaller scale though.
Okay.
In terms of quote your pack, your players, your table.
Right.
When do you earn a spot in the silver record? And I know there's going to be some people that go, well, the rules say I don't care. The rules say you get enough successes and it's in there. And when you go strictly by that, that's how
Mother
Larissa's flapjack recipe gets in the. You see, you knew.
Yep. I knew where you were going with that.
So,
I made these bomb-ass flapjacks.
right,
But
once
I
upon
got
a
14
time.
successes, so guess what? It's in there. Fuck you.
That's right. Or these sucked, but my rolls were so good on telling the story.
And we fought some
The time I
spirals.
ruined Mother Larissa's flapjacks.
And we fought some spirals, I guess.
I guess. Yep, that's one too. Long-time listeners will know that's why I made people tell the stories and not rely on rolls. Because I guess should not be in the silver record.
Here's where I draw the line when it comes to my table. All right, you already have the silver record, and my game is going to be set in the modern era. So if the accomplishments of the pack aren't equivalent or have the same gravitas as one of the stories that's already been calcified in the silver record, then it wouldn't warrant inclusion. Unfortunately, that epic has gotten to the point now where a story has to at least have some weight to be able to have a strong foundation for the years to build upon that myth to make it big. Because as you know, the stories in the silver record, they have slight embellishments from telling to telling. It's going to be taller tale, but even tall tales have to have a kernel of truth at its core, and it has to be of a significant kernel. So if the accomplishments of the pack aren't strong enough for it to really warrant being turned into this grandiose mythos, then it's not really silver record worthy.
I mean, I'm with you there. I think, and
I agree. I look at...
Oh, no, I agree with him, too.
Yeah, I agree. But then at the same time, we can throw in... We did the 4-parter, right, of our first 4, the postmortems.
Into the Breach, yes.
Into the Breach. And we look at that story, and I know there's quite a few who still haven't heard that. So if you haven't, go back and listen, because it's actually pretty good.
Okay, spoiler alert.
But we look at the sacrifice at the end there. And
Right.
we were part of that, but that
Don't
doesn't...
tell our side of the story.
Right. But if it's going to be in the silver record, it's not what we did as a pack, because we were just there for it.
Right.
We were just barely, old enough to be...
We were on the outskirts. I mean,
You bore witness, but...
Right. We were witness to it. That story probably should be in the silver record as far as our game goes. But it's
Right.
not
If
the story of our pack. It was
Right.
the story of the sacrifice and all the different packs that came together to do it. And also, maybe our pack was there. Barely.
Let me take that to a different level there.
Okay.
And I won't give any details because this deals with our most recent chronicle, Shadows and Tall Trees.
Right.
But their pack discovered something relevant and old. Like they rediscovered something that was lost. And you guys did it. Now, certainly that accomplishment, that story, what happened, deserves to be told. Now, is it silver record worthy? Maybe. But the difference is where and how it gets told.
Absolutely.
So, like, you go home to your sept and you tell the story to all your friends and family at your home sept, and it's going to stay there.
Right.
But, the next time you're sent out on a job, like across the country, and you tell that story, and maybe that story moves on, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Both the strength of the tale and how far it goes in the winds. If you have a bunch of Striders, for example, in your sept, and that story's good enough, that's going to get told other places. Much as you guys love like the Rabies and Chains pack from our games,
Right.
they're a local group. Their name rings out in Jersey. They know who they are over in Manhattan.
But maybe that's it.
Right. You go over to California and drop the name Rabies and Chains, no one knows what the fuck you're talking about. So I think that has something to do with it too.
Oh, I agree. 100% agree. But then you look at, the Silent Howl in our game, and they're I want to say the word nomadic pack.
They're a very nomadic pack.
So
their stories get out everywhere.
exactly. And definitely embellished.
A little bit.
And I'm sure even like with Sekhmet Rainmaker would hear his own story sometime and go, yeah, that happened.
Or hear and go, no, it didn't happen that way. It happened this way.
Probably.
Yeah.
And yet, to use our games, for example, the story of the time the Sekhmet Rainmaker killed a Nexus crawler with a sandcastle. Now, is that relevant in the grand scheme of things? No, it's not. But it's an entertaining story. It's
Right.
a story that's going to get passed around. I think that story does make the silver record because people keep fucking telling it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And that's-
Because it's constantly told, that makes it in there.
Yep. Grant?
If you're looking at it from a practical perspective, out of the table itself, for a storyteller, I would advise storytellers to look at either like chapter-wide events or even chronicle-wide events to decide if it should be included in the silver record in your own table canon. If it's something that it's a whole chronicle that all this crazy stuff happened in the chronicle, pick out the 2 or 3 major significant events and then create a silver record story from those events. And then incorporate those into your table. And I think that's probably the best way to really do it, because that way you have some type of buy-in from your table, from your characters at your table, into the silver record itself, so that, like Danny was talking about, Chronicle or 2 down the road, you have your players sitting around Moot Fire and they hear this tale of their first Chronicle, but it's been truncated based on you as a storyteller writing it to be appropriate for the silver record. So they know the story because they lived it, but it's been really embellished and made this grandiose story, so they're kind of also entranced, like, hey, that's really cool. I was there. I seen that Nexus crawler get smashed by a sandcastle. Not exactly how it happened, but I love the way they're going.
I think that's great advice to build on, again, how it's told, and not only when it's told by players should be important too, to help pass that on. But I think with that, we are unfortunately out of time for the day.
Yeah, it's pretty close. So
So before we do the sign off, Grant, what are you working on? What should people get excited about? Look out for.
So for Weaponized Inc., we have 2 things. We have Tales of the Savage Age, which is anthology stories that we're going to be releasing sometime soon. Brandon's leading up on it. We have a lot of really good authors that have wrote short stories for it that will be included. It's going through the final processes now, so anytime now to be released, and we'll let you all know when that happens. Myself, I'm still working on the tri-book Aja book for the Werecave Hyena for Savage Age. That's going to be fantastic. It's coming along. And then for Etched in Crimson, I'm still working on Enoch by Night very diligently. It will come out before anything else, I promise. I know I keep getting sidetracked and doing other books, but Enoch by Night is now my number 1 priority. And until it's released, that's what I'm going to be working on.
That's excellent, and you can find once they're out, and you'll hear about it here.
Oh, I'm sure we'll
'Cause-
tell everyone, yeah.
Because we'll shill for you, Grant. We love you.
Appreciate it.
You can find those at the Storyteller's Vault when the time comes, and you can find the Savage Age, the Storyteller's Vault right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't, go do it. That's after you get done listening to this episode. Maybe listen to some past ones too, because why not, right? But that is our time today. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Not only for me, but on behalf of Mr. Daniel Tyson, Tommy Dixon, and I'm going to say Grant too, and he can't stop me. So everybody take care of yourselves, take care of each other, keep your claws sharp, your head on swivel. We'll see you.